So now we're going to talk a little bit about how do we define KPIs and what are KPIs to begin with. So let's begin. What is a KPI? Well, according to Heyman and Burberry, KPIs are indicators that summarize how marketing is doing relative to specific objectives and desired outcomes. What does that mean exactly? KPIs are areas, actions, outcomes, or functions that serve as a lens into the overall performance of an organization. In other words, they're areas or actions or outcomes or functions that indicate the overall performance in a key way of the entire organization. That's why they're called key performance indicators. Well, what are some examples of that? For instance, sales growth. It is a key indicator of performance because if you don't have sales typically in an organization, your company really isn't growing. Revenue is also a key performance indicator, as is market share. Now, if you're a nonprofit, your key performance indicators are going to be different things like the level of support for your organization, the level of awareness around your cause, or sentiment related to your cause, pro or con, depending on what you're trying to support or advocate against. Those can be your key performance indicators if you're not in the profit-making sector. But if you are in the profit-making sector, then the top three, sales growth, revenue, and market share, are usually among the most critical key performance indicators. Now, KPIs need goals. These are also known as targets. A goal is anything that you want to see your key performance indicator achieve. You need to measure a KPI against a specific goal. In other words, to measure success, we first have to define what success looks like numerically. In other words, it's not enough to simply say we want to see sales growth. How much sales growth do you want? 1 extra sale? 1 million extra sales? These are your goals. How much you want your KPI to grow by. For instance, do you want 25% of growth in sales? That's a goal for your KPI. Sales growth is the key performance indicator, and the goal is that it should grow by 25%. Market share is another key performance indicator. What if your goal for market share is to achieve 33% market share? That again is a goal against which you're going to measure your key performance indicator. If you fall short of 33% market share, you won't have achieved your goals as they relate to the key performance indicator. On the other hand, if you do achieve 33% market share, you will have achieved that goal. Let's say, on the other hand, you're a nonprofit or a social organization. One of my past clients, Equal Pay Negotiations, was an advocacy group and strategy consulting firm that helped women achieve pay parity. Women in the United States make 78 cents for every dollar people who identify as male do, and their goal was to close that gap. So their key performance indicator was certainly for people to hire them as consultants, but it was also to reach women with their message of how to learn how to be more assertive and learn how to negotiate a better salary for yourself. And so their goal was to reach, let's say, 12 million women. It was a little bit more modest in the case of the state of Massachusetts, but we did want to reach millions of different women with our empowerment message. And again, if you're a nonprofit, that's the kind of goal you're going to have for your KPIs. It's not necessarily going to be about making money. It's going to be about reaching people with your message or raising awareness. Now, even if you're obviously in the profit business, you certainly want to reach people with your marketing message, but usually the marketing message itself is not the goal. It's not the point. You want to reach people with your message so that they might buy from you, so that your revenue will increase as your sales increase. And that's different from saying that you simply want to reach a large number of people. It doesn't help if you reach a large number of people, but they're not your target audience. And therefore, again, sales and market share are typically stronger KPIs than simple awareness for a profit-making organization. You can certainly have awareness-related goals, but typically you should also have ones that are related directly to revenue. Now, metrics, on the other hand, measure a KPI's success in reaching goals. So, for instance, we talked about the goal for sales growth to be 25%. That was the goal for the KPI of sales growth. Now, let's say you actually achieved 27% increase in sales. That is a measurement of what the actual numbers are. The goal is simply the theoretical target that you want to hit. The metrics are the actual number that you've hit. So let's be optimistic and let's say our actual metrics were even higher than our goals. We didn't just achieve 25% increase in sales, we got 27% of an increase in sales. We didn't just increase our market share to 33%, we got to 40% market share. We didn't just reach 12 million women, we reached 14 million women with our empowerment message. And so your metrics are the actual numbers that you're hitting as opposed to what your goals were. Now, sometimes we fall short of our goals. We don't reach 12 million women, we only reach 10. We don't get 33% market share, we only get 30% market share. And that's okay. The important thing is that you're measuring, you're engaging in metrics. In other words, you're looking at the real numbers and you're comparing them to your goals. And then you can figure out, what did we do right? What could we have done a little bit better? And then as long as you're measuring, as long as you're looking at those metrics, those real numbers, those actuals, and you're comparing them to your goals, you're staying on the right track if you then use that data to determine how you can do an even better job. And even when you see success, you still want to think about, how did we achieve that success? What did we do that was so right, that was so successful, so that we can replicate it? And that's where metrics come in. Typically in a marketing analytics class, we think first and foremost simply of the metrics. In other words, those descriptive numbers where we simply describe what's going on. Those are, however, simply metrics. They're not your KPIs and they're not your goals. In order to be strategic about analytics, we have to set goals, and those goals have to be for key performance indicators. In other words, for something that matters, for something that really measures whether our organization is successful or not. So how do we do that? How do we create effective KPIs? Well, first of all, you need to take a step back and you want to align your KPIs with your organizational mission. Typically speaking, obviously, if you're a for-profit company, your organizational mission is to make sales. However, again, sometimes you have to sacrifice short-term revenue or short-term sales for the long-term gain of market share. For instance, let's say you're a startup. You have a new and experimental product that you're not sure is going to work. Sometimes if you sell a lot of units before the product's been perfected, that can actually hurt your long-term growth, as a large majority of customers get their hands on an early prototype or almost prototype version of the product that isn't perfect yet. That might mean that you really don't want to have very high sales in the first year because you're not going to be able to give people that perfect product because you're still working on it. Instead, maybe your KPI for the first year is to reach the right customers. Those are customers who are willing to try an experimental product, one that is not ready yet for the mass market, and give you useful feedback. And therefore, your organizational mission in those first couple of years is to perfect your product rather than to secure very wide market share. So think about what your organizational mission is. Even in the for-profit sector, it might not simply be revenue. It might be the long-term stability of the organization, which may or may not include immediate rapid revenue growth. You also want to look at economic indicators. If you're going through tough economic times, a realistic amount of growth might be smaller than the amount of growth during really robust economic times. But you also want to look at overall trends in your industry and in your landscape. Right now we're in a situation where everybody wants to use video conferencing, so that even though the economy is going through a tough time, the video conferencing market is very robust and it's growing. And therefore, to set realistic KPIs, if you're a video conferencing company, you really need to think about going big, looking for large amounts of revenue, large amounts of market share, because that's what's realistic for you. Depending on how your industry is evolving, that's how you're going to be able to evolve your KPIs to be something that's both aggressive, yet at the same time can be realistically reached with the resources that you have to hand. So don't just look within your own organization at the data. You're also going to look outside your organization at the overall economy and the overall trends within your own industry, as well as the level of growth that your direct competitors are seeing in order to establish robust yet realistic KPIs. But once you've set those KPIs, your job is not done. Analytics is a constant, ongoing process. And so you're going to need to figure out how are you going to manage those KPIs in the long run. KPIs tend to be stable. As long as your company is in business, once you've perfected your product, you probably want to see steady year-over-year sales growth. Now, the goals, on the other hand, are going to evolve. In other words, in a year where the economy is a bit tough, maybe your sales goals are a little more modest. In years when the economy is roaring along, your sales goals are going to be a little bit more aggressive. You're also going to sometimes tweak your KPIs. As we talked about in the previous example, you might have a situation where your company is at an early growth stage and you're really looking at a KPI where you're perfecting your product and gaining buy-in from thought leaders in your industry, and only later on looking for widespread market share. Then, once you've determined what your KPIs and the associated goals that are going to be the measures of KPI success are for your organization, you have to gain widespread buy-in. You have to make sure your sales team, your product team, your executive leadership, your customer service teams all understand not only the KPIs and the goals. That can ensure that the whole organization is rowing this boat in the same direction, that everybody's aligned and everybody's working together towards the same goals and understanding what the measures of success are and how you've defined success as an organization. And then it's always important quarterly or at least twice a year to take a step back again and understand what the impact of working towards the goals associated with your KPIs is having on the organization. Is it always wise to go for rapid sales growth, or at least sales growth that's rapid in accordance with current economic and competitive conditions? Not always. If your organization is rapidly evolving and rapidly iterating on their products, there might come times when you want to take a step back and you don't want to necessarily engage in a lot of growth, because instead you want to engage in smart growth as you address a new market segment or maybe even branch out into entirely new product types. So think about whether your KPIs are making sense for the overall health of the organization, and whether you're really still needing to build towards those KPIs, or whether you need to develop a new set of KPIs based on your overall vision for the company and the overall state of your industry. For instance, let's say you are, a typewriter manufacturing company 30 years ago as the computer was becoming popular. Sales growth was probably not realistic for typewriters 30 years ago. On the other hand, it would have made sense to say, you know what, let's set our KPI as innovation, new product development, and let's see if we can develop new kinds of laptops or new kinds of PCs to bring to the market. And that would have been a new, better KPI to help the organization evolve and grow into a new era of growth. What all of this boils down to is that KPIs, although they tend to be stable over the near term and over the medium term as well, still need occasional evaluation to make sure they're still supporting the organization to be robust and strong and competitive as industries evolve. At the same time, you want to make sure that everybody within your organization knows how you define success and knows what the goals are towards which everybody is building and working, not just the promotions team, not just the communications team or marketing or however they're defined within your organization, but everyone across the board. Remember, marketing is not just promotions. It's all 4 P's: pricing, product, placement, and promotions. So you want to make sure that your product team as well as your executive leadership also understand the importance of all of your KPIs. That's how you set KPIs, set goals, and understand the role of metrics in measuring against those goals. I hope this helped dispel some of the myths around KPIs and set you on the track towards setting KPIs for your organization that will be effective and set your organization up for metrics-driven success and greater growth in the future.